The movie opens inside a small diner, where a shy young man named Bear is practicing how to confess his feelings to his childhood friend and longtime crush, Nikki Freeman. He's rehearsing the speech with a waitress, hoping to finally tell Nikki how he's felt for years. The waitress thinks the speech is actually pretty sweet, but Bear's best friend Ian says it's way too dramatic and that Nikki will probably run away before Bear even finishes the first sentence. Bear insists his feelings are genuine, but Ian tells him that's exactly the problem. Instead of pouring his heart out, he thinks Bear should keep things simple and just ask Nikki out for a drink. Ian keeps throwing out terrible dating advice, even suggesting Bear tease Nikki by calling her Freaky Nikki, an embarrassing nickname from high school that she absolutely hates. Bear knows that's a horrible idea, but Ian doubles down, insisting girls like playful teasing. All Bear wants is a chance to get Nikki alone so he can finally tell her the truth, but with the whole friend group heading to trivia night together, that won't be easy. When Bear gets home, he discovers his cat Sandy has passed away after getting into his oxy pills. He throws her body away, cleans up the mess, and breaks down crying. Later that night, Nikki calls after another exhausting shift at work. She tells Bear she finally put in her 2 weeks' notice because she's ready to move on. Then, in the middle of the call, she accidentally drops her crystal necklace down a drain. Bear asks if she can get it back, but it's already gone. Nikki asks what time he'll be at trivia night, but after everything that happened, Bear admits he isn't really in the mood anymore, but she convinces him to come anyway. Before heading to trivia, Bear stops by a crystal shop to buy Nikki a replacement necklace. While he's there, he notices a strange little collectible called a One Wish Willow that's supposedly able to grant one wish. The cashier keeps making weird comments about it being recalled, and jokes that people either regret using it or end up wishing they were dead. Bear assumes she's just messing with him and buys it anyway. At trivia night, Bear keeps looking for the perfect moment to confess his feelings, but it never comes. After trivia, Bear offers to drive Nikki home, giving him one last chance to finally tell her how he feels. During the drive, Nikki opens up about feeling stuck in life and says she dreams of becoming a writer. Bear mentions that he bought her a little gift, but instead of being excited, Nikki seems uncomfortable and changes the subject. She asks if he likes their other friend Sarah, but Bear tells her he only sees Sarah as a friend. Nikki then mentions that nobody can ever tell when she has a crush on someone and gets out of the car. Realizing this is probably his last chance, Bear calls her back and finally tries to confess. But then he takes Ian's terrible advice and calls her Freaky Nikki. Nikki gets super pissed and tells him she hates that nickname. Before going inside, she asks if he has feelings for her, but Bear loses his nerve and denies it. Feeling like he just blew his only chance, Bear opens the One Wish Willow. Then he wishes for Nikki to love him more than anyone else in the entire world, before snapping the stick in half. Just as Bear is about to leave, Nikki suddenly walks back outside and asks about the gift he wanted to give her. Bear lies and says he left it at home. Nikki looks disappointed and then insists that she shouldn't spend the night alone after her cat died. Bear is confused until Nikki suddenly realizes she meant his cat and awkwardly apologizes. As Bear glances at the broken One Wish Willow sitting in the back seat, he starts wondering if something is seriously wrong. Nikki keeps asking Bear to come inside with her, becoming more desperate every time he says no. Bear assumes she's just drunk, but her behavior is getting stranger by the second. She snaps at him, insisting she isn't drunk at all. Then she catches her own reflection in the side mirror and snaps back to normal, even laughing about how weird she's acting. A few seconds later, she changes again, climbs into Bear's car, and refuses to leave. By now, Bear is completely freaked out. That's when Nikki breaks down and tells Bear that her father is dying from leukemia and she can't bear the thought of going back inside her house alone. Feeling sorry for her, Bear takes her home with him instead. Bear gives Nikki his bed for the night and is about to sleep somewhere else, but she asks him to stay with her because she doesn't want to be alone. As he gets into bed, Nikki suddenly kisses him, and for a moment, it feels like everything Bear has wanted is finally happening. Then Nikki jerks away in absolute terror, staring at Bear like she's seeing him for the first time. She claims she thought she saw something behind him and immediately starts apologizing, insisting she doesn't know what's wrong with her. Bear calms her down, and eventually they both fall asleep. Later that night, Bear gets out of bed and searches online if the One Wish Willow could actually be real. The internet is no help at all. Half the posts say it's nothing more than an old urban legend, while the other half swear the wishes actually come true. Bear gives up and heads back to the bedroom, only to find Nikki sitting awake in the dark, waiting for him. She begs him to lie next to her again, and he gives in. The next morning, Bear wakes up to find Nikki already making breakfast. But then he notices she took Sandy's body back out of the trash, surrounded it with flower petals, and turned it into a memorial. Bear freaks out and is even more convinced that something is seriously off with her. Nikki, on the other hand, assumes she must have taken something that's making her act so strangely. The two head to work together, immediately making Ian suspicious. Once they're alone, Ian can't stop asking what happened the night before and assumes Bear finally slept with Nikki. Bear tells him that's not what happened at all. Instead, he explains how Nikki kept switching between laughing, crying, kissing him, and acting like a completely different person. He also reveals that she told him her dad is dying from leukemia. Ian finds the whole story hard to believe and figures Nikki was probably just high on Molly. Throughout the day, Nikki can't stop staring at Bear with a huge, unnatural smile on her face. After work, Bear tries to avoid being alone with her again and tells Nikki he can't drive her home. She surprisingly doesn't argue and says Ian will take her instead, leaving Bear wondering if maybe Ian was right after all. But that theory doesn't last very long. Not long after Bear gets home, there's a knock at his door. It's Nikki, and she apologizes for everything that happened the night before and admits she was on Molly. Then, completely out of nowhere, she confesses that she's fallen for him. Bear can hardly believe what he's hearing and asks how long she's felt that way. Nikki tells him it wasn't instant and that her feelings slowly grew over time. This time, when she asks if he feels the same way, Bear finally admits that he does. Before long, the two officially become a couple. They spend nearly every moment together, kissing at work and acting like they're completely inseparable. While Bear couldn't be happier, Ian and Sarah can't help but feel like the whole relationship came out of nowhere. In the middle of their date, Bear gets a call from Ian. After doing some digging, Ian discovers that Nikki's dad isn't dying at all. He's perfectly healthy, and Nikki barely even has a relationship with him. Sarah also tells Ian that, until recently, Nikki always talked about Bear like he was a little brother and even thought the idea of dating him was gross. Ian has no idea what's happening, but he's convinced Nikki is acting like a completely different person. When Bear returns to the table, Nikki surprises him with a gift. He asks why she's giving it to him. Nikki tells him she loves him so much and doesn't think she could live without him. Bear asks if she loves him more than anyone else in the entire world. Nikki immediately says yes, confirming exactly what he wished for. Then Bear asks Nikki if she lied about her dad having cancer. The question instantly changes her mood. Nikki jumps to her feet and starts yelling in the middle of the restaurant, demanding to know why it even matters. Everyone turns to stare as Bear tries to calm her down. Just seconds later, she's smiling again like nothing ever happened, and Bear decides to drop the subject. They later go back to his place and sleep together, while Nikki doesn't seem to be in control of herself. That night, Bear wakes up to find Nikki standing in the corner of the room, just watching him sleep. When he asks what she's doing, she admits she's afraid to go back to bed because she hates her dreams. Eventually, she agrees to lie down again, but she holds a vase in front of her face as she is walking back to bed, almost like she's trying to avoid seeing her own reflection. Later, when Bear tries to get out of bed, Nikki suddenly screams at him not to leave her alone. The next morning, Bear gets ready for work, only to discover that Nikki has covered his entire front door with duct tape to stop him from leaving. She happily hands him a packed lunch, then stands by the door with a blank smile on her face as he leaves and pees herself. At work, Bear tries to act like everything is normal while chatting with Sarah. But when he opens the sandwich Nikki packed for him, he lifts the top slice of bread and discovers Sandy's severed paw inside, making him immediately throw up. After work, Bear confronts Ian about not inviting him to his party. Ian admits he did it on purpose because Nikki is clearly going through something, and from the outside, it looks like Bear is taking advantage of the situation. Eventually, Ian gives in and tells Bear he can come after all, but Nikki can't. Ian explains that if Bear and Nikki's relationship is actually healthy and not built on some weird codependency, then spending one evening apart shouldn't be a problem. Bear reluctantly agrees to come alone. On the drive home, Bear finally calls the phone number printed on the One Wish Willow box, hoping there's some way to undo what he did. Instead, the customer service representative tells him the wish can't be changed or reversed. The only way it ends is when the person who made the wish dies. Before hanging up, the representative puts the real Nikki on the line. All Bear hears is her screaming in absolute terror. When Bear gets home, he finds Nikki standing in the exact same spot where he left her, covered in urine, vomit, and feces. She apologizes and says she'll go clean herself up. While Nikki is in the shower, Bear awkwardly tells her that Ian invited him to a boys' night. Nikki says she'll get dressed and go with him. Bear explains that Ian wanted it to be just the guys, but Nikki points out that Sarah told her she's going too, so it clearly isn't just a boys' night. The conversation quickly spirals, with Nikki becoming more and more distressed until she starts smashing her head into the bathroom mirror. Terrified she might hurt herself again, Bear gives in and takes her to the party with him. At the party, everyone starts playing drunk Jenga. Things are normal until Nikki stands up and begins reciting a disturbing passage from Hansel and Gretel, making the entire room incredibly uncomfortable. A few turns later, Bear pulls a block telling him to kiss the person on his left. Sarah is sitting beside him, but before he can react, Nikki drags Sarah out of her chair and takes her place. She tells Bear that no one will ever understand how deeply she loves him, leaving him with no choice but to kiss her. The kiss suddenly snaps the real Nikki back to reality. She screams that this is not her, then grabs a broken beer bottle and repeatedly stabs herself in the face. Everyone rushes to stop her as Bear takes her to the hospital. Later, Bear brings Nikki back home and tries to reason with her. He asks if she really likes him and if she's actually happy. Nikki just stares back with an unsettling smile. Bear begs her to spend just one night apart and pleads with her to be herself again. Nikki insists she can be Nikki and tells him she loves him, but Bear admits those feelings aren't real. Nikki insists she loves him in every reality, and finally Bear admits that he loves her too. The moment those words leave his mouth, Nikki slowly starts backing away while mumbling to herself, making Bear think she's about to snap. He begs her to stop, but Nikki reassures him that she'd never hurt him. Bear is still terrified, so he suggests that Nikki have the bed to herself for the night while he sleeps at Ian's and comes back in the morning. At first, Nikki agrees. Then she tells him that if she has the bed all to herself that night, she'll slowly start feeling cold, like she's walked into a freezer. Little by little, every feeling inside her will disappear until there's nothing left, and that forces him to stay with her through the night. Later that night, Sarah texts Bear asking him to meet her. As he's sneaking out of the house, the real Nikki suddenly takes control and desperately begs him to kill her while freaky Nikki is asleep. But Bear asks what's so terrible about being with him and leaves to meet Sarah. They meet in her parked car, where she reveals that Ian and Nikki have been casually hooking up on and off for years, and Ian believes Nikki only started dating Bear to get back at him. Sarah also hints that she has feelings for Bear and admits she was supposed to be the one he kissed during the Jenga game. Before either of them can say another word, Nikki comes charging toward the car. She smashes the driver's side window, places a brick against the steering wheel, and repeatedly slams Sarah's face into it. As Bear is frozen in shock, Nikki reminds him that this is what he wished for and that they'll have to get rid of the body together. Bear rushes back to the antique shop and desperately begs the clerk for another One Wish Willow, hoping he can simply wish everything back to normal. The clerk explains that's impossible because each person only gets one wish. Bear tries snapping another willow anyway, but no matter how hard he pulls, it won't break. Feeling sorry for him, the clerk suggests there might be one possible loophole. If someone else made a wish that directly contradicted Bear's, it might cancel it out. Otherwise, the only way the original wish ends is when Bear dies. With no other option, Bear rushes to Ian's house and finally tells him the truth about the willow. Ian thinks he's completely lost it until Bear hands him one. Before Bear can explain exactly what to wish for, Ian sarcastically wishes for $1 billion. Seconds later, cash starts raining from the ceiling, proving the willow is real but Ian has already wasted his wish. Bear races back home and finds Sarah's body propped up in the living room, while Nikki acts like nothing is wrong, hoping to fix everything. He gives Nikki another One Wish Willow and reminds her she'll do anything for him. He tries to convince her to make a wish that she'll only love him as a friend, but before he can finish, Nikki's obsession takes over. She becomes convinced Bear doesn't love her and grabs a gun, threatening to kill herself if he won't admit his feelings. Just then, Ian bursts into the house after following the strange messages he'd been receiving from Sarah's phone, and Nikki shoots him in the head. Bear locks himself in the bathroom while Nikki pounds on the door, begging him to come back out and promising they'll be together forever. Realizing there's only one way to end the curse, Bear points the gun at his head, but can't bring himself to pull the trigger. Instead, he swallows the same oxy pills that killed his cat. Almost immediately, he regrets it and tries to throw up the pills. But then he hears the snap of a One Wish Willow. Nikki's wish for Bear to love her back takes hold instantly, and Bear stops trying to vomit and walks out of the bathroom. For the first time, the two finally feel the same way about each other and share one last kiss. But the overdose quickly takes effect, and Bear collapses into Nikki's arms. As she's about to shoot herself too, Bear dies, instantly breaking the original wish. Nikki finally snaps back to her real self. As she takes in Bear, Ian, and Sarah's bodies, she begins screaming hysterically. The end. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time.